The day they fired me, I had given 7 years of my life to Nexus Innovations. The clock in the corner of my monitor ticked over to 9 p.m. I was the only one left in the office. The clatter of my keyboard was the only sound in the cavernous, empty space. My project manager, Mark Edwards, had dropped an emergency bug on my desk that afternoon. The client was apparently having a complete meltdown, and it had to be fixed by morning. It was always like this. For 7 years, I had spent countless nights just like this one, sitting here alone, cleaning up someone else's mess. On the screen, the final line of code compiled without an error. The system was stable again. I leaned back in my chair and let out a long, slow breath. My phone lit up. It was a text from Leo Vance from Human Resources. "Alex, can you come to the conference room?" My stomach dropped. A summons from HR at this hour was never a good sign. I walked in the conference room. Leo sat behind a long table, his expression as blank and manufactured as a corporate headshot. There was no emotion in it. A single file folder lay on the polished wood surface. "Sign here," he said. "Your last day is the end of the month." His voice was as cold and lifeless as his eyes. "My name is Alex Carter. Most of the senior guys just call me Carter. I'm 35, the most senior programmer at Nexus Innovations. The company's flagship project, the ARC system. Every single line of its code was etched with my digital signature." I looked down at the termination papers. The reason cited was organizational restructuring. Such a tired, familiar phrase. I didn't ask why. I didn't want to. That same afternoon, Mark Edwards had been clapping me on the shoulder, telling me the project would fall apart without me. Now, I was just another cost to be restructured. I picked up the pen without a moment's hesitation. The scratch of ink on paper was decisive. I signed my name. A flicker of surprise crossed Leo's eyes. He clearly hadn't expected me to be so compliant. He had probably rehearsed a whole speech to counter the inevitable shouting and pleading. But I didn't say a word. 7 years of dedication, reduced to a joke in a single moment. What was the point of arguing? "What about the handover?" I asked. "Kevin will be taking over your responsibilities. Just give him the files," Leo said. Kevin, the intern I had personally trained, who had just been hired full-time 6 months ago. The kid was a magician with PowerPoint and even better at schmoozing the higher-ups. I nodded. "Okay." As I left the conference room, I saw Kevin standing just outside the door. He flinched when he saw me, his eyes darting away, but the smirk he couldn't quite suppress gave him away. I said nothing and walked back to my desk. Everyone else had already gone home. I didn't have much to pack. A coffee mug, a few technical manuals, and the ergonomic neck pillow that was a programmer's best friend. I placed them, one by one, into a cardboard box. Walking past Mark's office, I noticed the door was slightly ajar. He was on the phone, his voice booming with satisfaction. "Yeah, all taken care of. The client is happy. The core tech? Don't worry, Kevin has it all under control. Plus, he's young. His salary is a fraction of the cost. He's way more efficient than Carter ever was." I froze, listening. In that instant, my heart turned to ice. I clutched the box to my chest and took one last look at the place where I had poured 7 years of my soul. The lights were bright, but the office felt as cold and desolate as a tomb. The security guard at the front desk stopped me on my way out. "Heading out for good, Alex?" he asked, his voice kind. "Yeah, that's right, Bill." "Man, this industry moves too fast," he sighed. I managed a small smile and didn't reply. I took the last bus home, the city lights blurring past the window. I pulled out my personal laptop, opened a terminal window. With practiced ease, my fingers flew across the keyboard, typing a long, complex string of commands. It was a remote script, one that connected to a small server I kept running in my basement. For the past 3 years, this script had been executing automatically every night at midnight. It synchronized a critical set of external data for the ARC system, performing a complex series of cleaning and pre-processing tasks. It was, in essence, half the system's heart, and I was the only person in the entire company who knew it existed. I never told anyone because it was work I did off the books, something I built on my own time to make the system more robust. Now it was time to shut it down. I hit the final enter key. A single line of text appeared on the screen. "Stop underscore task underscore success." The task was terminated. I closed my laptop. The bus had reached my stop. I stepped off, holding my box of belongings. Nexus Innovations, goodbye. When I got home, my wife, Sarah, was still awake. The moment she saw me with the cardboard box, she understood everything. She didn't blame me. She didn't ask questions. She just walked over and took the box from my hands. "It's okay," she said softly. "It's good for you to get some rest. You've been working too hard for too long." I looked at her, a warmth spreading through my chest, and my eyes began to sting. This was my last refuge. This was home. For the first week after the layoff, I did absolutely nothing. I slept until I woke up naturally, cooked meals for Sarah, and took our son to the park. I tried my and Kevin's poorly hidden glee. Anger and a sense of betrayal gnawed at me like a venomous snake. The second week, I started organizing my work from the past 7 years. Code repositories, documentation, project notes. When I came across the core algorithm for the ARC system, I paused. I had named the algorithm Boreas. It was the soul of the entire system. And it was something I had built entirely on my own, fueled by countless sleepless nights. When I first implemented it, Mark was ecstatic. He promised he'd file for a patent bonus on my behalf. But then, as always, things got busy and it was forgotten. The company had never asked me to sign any sort of intellectual property assignment agreement for it. They just assumed that because Alex Carter, was their employee, everything I created automatically belonged to them. An idea struck me like a bolt of lightning. I picked up my phone and called an old college friend, David Chun, now a partner at a top law firm, specializing in intellectual property. "David, I need your help." I explained the whole situation with the Boreas algorithm. When I finished, David was silent for a long moment. "Alex, you were a fool," he finally said, his voice sharp. "How could you not protect something so critical?" "But," he continued, "it might not be too late." He explained that the laws around work-for-hire intellectual property could be complex. The key was whether I could prove that the algorithm's development relied primarily on my personal knowledge and skills, rather than the company's resources. And, crucially, Nexus had never formally claimed ownership of it. I had a chance. Under David's guidance, I began to assemble my evidence. The original handwritten notes for the algorithm's design, records of every iteration, the timestamps on the files I kept in my personal cloud storage. I had saved everything. It was the last shred of a programmer's dignity. A month later, I submitted a thick stack of patent application documents. All that was left to do was wait. While I waited, I didn't stay idle. I took all of my savings and registered a small company. I called it Momentum Dynamics. The office was a small, rented desk in a co-working space in our neighborhood. One table, one computer. That was it. I started rewriting the Boreas algorithm from the ground up. This time, I held nothing back. I upgraded it completely. The new algorithm, I called Eurus. Its performance was an order of magnitude better than Boreas. When I finished, I let out a long breath. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew I couldn't let them break me. Alex Carter was not going to admit defeat. That afternoon, I got a call from David. His voice was tinged with excitement. "Alex, the patent certificate came through." I gripped the phone, my palms slick with sweat. "And one more thing," David went on. "That contract you asked me to look into, the one between Nexus Innovations and their big client, Apex Logistics. I managed to get a look at a copy through some back channels. There's a very interesting clause in there." "What kind of clause?" I asked, my voice tight. "A service-level agreement. An uptime guarantee." David's voice was precise and clear over the phone. "Nexus Innovations guarantees Apex Logistics that the ARC system will maintain 99.9% uptime throughout the year. Any service interruption caused by the system itself that lasts longer than 48 consecutive hours gives Apex Logistics the right to unilaterally terminate the contract." And, he added, "they can demand a full refund of the project fees, plus a substantial penalty for breach of contract." My heart began to pound against my ribs. A 99.9% uptime guarantee. I knew that was impossible. The ARC system was like a beautiful skyscraper with a rotten foundation. It was riddled with countless patches that only I had put in place. And that remote script I had disabled was the most critical patch of all. The data it was responsible for synchronizing was the core basis for the system's risk assessment and dynamic scheduling. Without it, the system wouldn't crash immediately, but the data would grow stale day by day. It was like running a car without oil. The engine would slowly grind itself to dust. Performance would degrade, and error rates would climb exponentially. until, at some tipping point, it would suffer a catastrophic failure. And the process was irreversible. Not unless someone could rebuild the data processing module from the ground up. And at Nexus Innovations, besides me, no one could. Kevin? You wouldn't even know where to begin looking for that module. David, thank you, I said, my voice filled with gratitude. I owe you one. After hanging up, I stood by the window, looking out at the city. A storm was coming. I opened my laptop and began drafting a new project proposal. This one was for Apex Logistics. Using my new Urus algorithm, I designed a completely new solution. It was cheaper, more efficient, and far more stable. I called it the Voyager system. I didn't send it right away. I was waiting for the perfect moment. The days ticked by. Soon, it had been nearly 3 months since I left Nexus. Then, one night, as I was sound asleep, my phone began to ring incessantly. It was an unknown number. I swiped to answer, but before I could speak, a frantic, trembling voice burst through the speaker. It was Leo Vance, the HR manager who had personally fired me. Carter, Alex, it's me, Leo. You need to get back to the office now. We have a massive problem. I held the phone away from my ear and rubbed my eyes. I glanced at the alarm clock on the nightstand. 2:30 a.m. Mr. Vance, is something wrong? I asked, my voice deliberately calm. The ARC system crashed. It's a complete meltdown. Leo was practically screaming into the phone. The client is going insane. Mark Edwards has been suspended, and Kevin just quit. You're the only one in the whole company who can fix this. Please, Carter, just come back. We'll give you anything you want. Equity, an executive position, you name it. I listened to his desperate pleading, but I felt nothing. Only a quiet sense of finality. This day had finally come. I let out a small yawn and, speaking slowly and clearly, said the words I had been rehearsing for months. First, I began, my voice flat and devoid of any emotion. I need to confirm, Mr. Vance, in what capacity are you speaking to me right now? Are you representing Nexus Innovations? Or are you calling in a personal capacity? Leo was clearly taken aback. He had likely anticipated anger, sarcasm, or an exorbitant list of demands. He had never expected a question like this, one that instantly drew the sharp, clean line between him and me, between Nexus and me. His breathing grew heavy over the phone. After a few seconds, he answered, his voice strained. Of course, I'm representing the company. Good, I said, nodding to myself as if I were in a routine business call. Second, as of last month, I, Alex Carter, am no longer an employee of Nexus Innovations. I have no legal employment relationship with your company. Therefore, the internal affairs of Nexus Innovations are of no concern to me. I enunciated the company's name with deliberate clarity. The name I had once dedicated 7 years of my life to now sounded foreign and cold coming from my lips. Leo was completely silent. I could almost picture his expression, shock, disbelief, and a hint of humiliated anger. He was used to giving orders from his position in HR, used to that posture of authority. He thought a single phone call, a vague promise of anything you want, would have me running back, grateful for the chance to put out his fire. He was wrong. Third, I said, not giving him time to recover, delivering the final blow. If Nexus Innovations is indeed facing a technical problem it cannot solve and requires external technical support, then please have your company's legal representative, along with your legal team, contact my company, Momentum Dynamics, to schedule a formal business consultation. After saying those 3 things, I didn't give him a chance to respond. I hung up the phone. The world was instantly, blessedly quiet. I tossed my phone onto the nightstand. Turning my head, I saw Sarah looking at me, her eyes wide open. There was no surprise in them, only a small smile and a deep sense of compassion. Did I wake you? I asked. She shook her head, sitting up to adjust my blanket. I heard everything. Feel better now? I let out a long breath and nodded. Yeah, I do. But, I added, this is just the beginning. Sarah took my hand. Whatever you decide to do, I'm with you. It's not about the money, it's the principle of the thing. I squeezed her warm hand, and the last shred of doubt in my mind vanished. She was right. This wasn't just about money or revenge. It was about reclaiming the dignity that had been trampled on for 7 years. It was about the respect a skilled professional deserves. It was about fighting for myself. I lay back down, but couldn't fall back asleep. I knew that Nexus Innovations was in a state of chaos. Leo would relay my words verbatim to the higher-ups. They would be shocked, furious, and in utter disbelief. An old employee they had discarded like trash wasn't begging to come back. He had become the owner of another company, a company they now desperately needed help from. The sheer irony of the situation would be enough to shatter the composure of an opportunist like Mark Edwards. What would they do next? Try to entice me with a better offer? Threaten me? Or would they actually swallow their pride and come to me to negotiate? I closed my eyes, running through all the possible scenarios. Whatever they chose, I was ready. From the moment I decided to register momentum dynamics, from the day I filed the patent for the Boris algorithm, I was no longer the easygoing, pushover Alex Carter they thought they knew. This was going to be a long night. The next morning, my phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed a name I once knew all too well, a name that now felt like a relic from a past life. Mark Edwards. I didn't answer right away. I let the phone vibrate on the table, its buzzing a persistent, annoying drone. Sarah came out of the kitchen with breakfast. Is it him? I nodded. Eat first, she said, placing a bowl of hot oatmeal in front of me. Whatever it is, it can wait. You need to eat. I picked up my spoon and slowly ate. The oatmeal was warm and comforting. The phone finally stopped ringing. But a few minutes later, it started again, stubborn and insistent. Over and over. I finished my last bite, wiped my mouth, and casually picked up the phone, pressing the answer button. Hello. Alex. My man. I'm so glad you finally picked up. Mark's voice was exaggeratedly warm and enthusiastic, as if there had never been any bad blood between us. As if Leo's frantic call in the middle of the night had never happened. As if he were still the supportive boss who clapped me on the shoulder and told me how indispensable I was. I laughed inwardly. What is it, Mark? My voice was level, betraying no emotion. Hey, don't be like that, Alex. Mark's tone shifted to one of mock reproach. We've been through 7 years together, man. Why the cold shoulder? That idiot Leo. Did he say something to you last night? Don't listen to him. What does an HR guy know about anything? The layoffs were a corporate decision, from way above my head. My hands were tied. It broke my heart to see you go, you know that. He was already starting to deflect, expertly washing his hands of any responsibility. Alex, let's forget about the past. I know I messed up. I should have fought harder for you. Right now, the company's in a bit of a jam. You need to come back. I'll make you director of engineering, effective immediately. Double your old salary, plus 5% in stock options. What do you say? He had finally gotten to the point. The same old playbook. Play the sympathy card, then make a bunch of empty promises. He really thought I was the same naive Alex Carter he could so easily manipulate. Mark, I said, cutting him off. I believe I made my position perfectly clear to Mr. Vance last night. If you wish to discuss a business collaboration, please follow the proper channels. Personally, you and I have nothing to discuss. The line went silent. Mark's breathing became a sharp hiss in my ear. He never imagined I would refuse so bluntly, so dismissively. The warmth in his voice vanished, replaced by an icy menace. Carter, don't push your luck. You really think this company can't function without you? Let me tell you something. You walked out of Nexus with our brand all over you. Everything you developed here is company property, work for hire. If you dare to use any of it, that's intellectual property theft, and we will sue you into the ground. I'm advising you, for your own good, to come back quietly. We can all walk away from this without making it ugly. The threats had begun. This, too, was expected. When bribery failed, threats were all they had left. Unfortunately for him, he had completely miscalculated. Work for hire? I let out a soft chuckle. Mark, it sounds like you need to brush up on your IP law. Also, a friendly reminder for you. The ARC system, which Nexus Innovations is currently using, is built on a core algorithm called Boreas. Last month, my personal patent application for that very algorithm was approved. I recited the long patent number from memory. According to federal law, your company is currently infringing on my personal intellectual property. I can file a lawsuit at any time, demanding you cease all use of the system and compensate me for my financial losses. You? Mark was utterly speechless. I could hear his ragged, furious breaths. His trump card, his big threat, had just been rendered a pathetic joke by my patent certificate. Not only were they begging me to come back and save them, But the very system their entire business relied on was built on a foundation of infringement against me. The leverage was and always had been entirely in my hands. So, Mark, I said, my tone so calm it was almost cruel, delivering the final summary. The situation is not that I'm begging to come back to Nexus. It's that Nexus needs to beg me. Think it over, and then have your lawyers contact mine. With that, I hung up the phone again. I knew, from that moment on, the scales of the negotiation had tipped irrevocably in my favor. The Nexus Innovations Board of Directors would soon receive this very unsettling piece of news. And my lawyer, David, was about to get the signal he'd been waiting for. I dialed David's number. David, they took the bait. His cheerful laugh came over the line. I knew those guys wouldn't see reason until they were staring into the abyss. Don't worry, the cease and desist letter is already drafted. It'll be on the desk of Nexus's legal department by this afternoon. An infringement notice, coupled with an invitation to a business negotiation. A little bit of stick, a little bit of carrot. Let's see if they're smart enough to take the deal. After the call, I opened my laptop and logged into my email. Sure enough, a new, unread email was waiting for me from a Nexus Innovations legal department. The subject line read, "Urgent legal notice regarding Mr. Alex Carter's suspected violation of trade secrets." I smiled and shook my head. Their reaction time was a step and a half too slow. I ignored the worthless email. Instead, I opened another document I had prepared long ago, the system proposal titled Voyager. I took a deep breath, found the publicly listed email address for the Chief Technology Officer of Apex Logistics, and sent the proposal, the culmination of all my work and all my hopes, on its way. Apex Logistics, a titan in the national shipping industry, Nexus Innovations' biggest client, and the sole user of the ARC system. In this high-stakes game, Nexus was my opponent, but Apex Logistics was the judge. Whoever could solve their problem, whoever could create value for them, would win their favor. The business world is nothing if not pragmatic. My email was direct and to the point. No pleasantries. In the first paragraph, I introduced myself. Alex Carter, former chief architect of the ARC system, and the sole developer and patent holder of the Boreas algorithm. In the second paragraph, I briefly outlined the technical crisis and legal risks Nexus was facing. I pointed out that the ARC system had entered a state of irreversible decay due to a fundamental flaw in its underlying data processing module. I also attached a scanned copy of the patent certificate for the Boreas algorithm. This meant that not only could Nexus not fix the system, but their very right to continue using it was now in question. The third and most crucial paragraph was where I presented my solution, the Voyager system. Built on the brand new Eurus algorithm, its performance was superior in every way, and it came with complete, ironclad, independently owned intellectual property rights. I promised that I could deploy a temporary system within 72 hours to restore Apex's core operations and complete a seamless transition from the old system to the new one within a month. The cost would be 20% lower than what they were paying Nexus Innovations. It was an offer that no CTO could refuse. It was a surgical strike precisely targeting all of Apex Logistics' pain points. The anxiety of a system crash, the frustration of being held hostage by a vendor, and the concern over future technical liabilities. And I was the doctor who could cure all their ills. After sending the email, I closed my laptop, a sense of calm washing over me. I had done everything I could. I had played all my cards. Now all I could do was wait. Wait for my opponent's reaction, and for the judge's verdict. The afternoon was quiet. Nexus Innovations, after receiving David's legal notice, fell into a dead silence. Mark didn't call back. Neither did Leo. I imagined their offices were in an uproar, a flurry of heated arguments and strategic debates. Should they swallow their pride and seek a truce with me, or stubbornly try to find another solution? The choice must have been agonizing for their leadership. Apex Logistics also remained silent, which was expected. A corporation of their size has a complex internal decision-making process. Upon receiving my email, their technical department would first need to conduct an emergency evaluation to verify my claims and assess the feasibility of my Voyager proposal. This process would take time. I was patient because I knew that time was on my side. Every hour the ARC system remained down, Apex Logistics was losing an astronomical amount of money. And the pressure on Nexus Innovations would multiply with each passing minute. In the evening, I received a call from an unknown local number. I assumed it was a telemarketer and answered casually. "May I speak with Mr. Alex Carter of Momentum Dynamics?" A steady, powerful, middle-aged voice came through the phone. My heart skipped a beat. This voice didn't belong to anyone at Nexus. "This is he." I answered, my voice low. "Mr. Carter, hello. My name is Robert Hayes. I'm a Chief Technology Officer at Apex Logistics." "He's here." I gripped the phone, walked over to the window, and tried to calm my racing pulse. The moment I had been waiting for had arrived. "Mr. Hayes, it's a pleasure. I received your email," Hayes said. His voice was calm, but he spoke quickly. "Our technical team has already conducted a preliminary verification of its contents. Your claims appear to be accurate. Nexus Innovations has been unable to provide us with any viable solutions." I listened quietly, not interrupting. "So, I'd like to meet with you," Hayes continued. "Right now, I'm at the coffee shop downstairs from your building. I can give you 30 minutes. Is that a problem?" I took a deep breath and ended the call. 30 minutes. That's all Robert Hayes gave me. This wasn't just a meeting. It was an interview, a high-stakes pressure test. He wanted to see if Alex Carter was the master strategist from the email or just a lucky programmer who stumbled into an opportunity. I didn't rush downstairs. Instead, I went to the bedroom and opened my closet. My wife, Sarah, helped me pick out a clean white button-down and a dark casual blazer. "Go on," she said, smoothing a wrinkle on my collar. "Let them see you're not the same old Alex they could push around." I nodded. The man in the mirror looked back at me, his eyes sharp, his demeanor calmer than I felt. I walked in the coffee shop 5 minutes early. I spotted him immediately, sitting at a table by the window. Robert Hayes was in his late 40s, dressed in a dark blue polo shirt, a laptop open in front of him. He looked focused, professional, and efficient. He didn't look up as I approached, his attention locked on his screen. I sat down across from him. Only then did he raise his head, his gaze sharp as a hawk's. "Alex Carter, that's me." He didn't offer a handshake, just gestured to the chair. "Have a seat. We spent all day analyzing your email," Hayes began, skipping any pretense of small talk. "Your proposed technical solution is, in theory, viable, but it's also a huge risk. Why should we trust you? Why should we trust a brand new, one-man company?" His questions were relentless, cutting straight to the heart of the matter. I didn't try to argue or defend myself. I just reached into my briefcase and pulled something out. A single USB drive. I pushed it gently across the table. "Mr. Hayes, on this drive, you'll find a demo version of the Voyager system. It also contains a complete, temporary takeover plan tailored to Apex Logistics' current core business operations." I met his gaze. I wrote every line of its code myself over the past 3 months. The ARC system at Nexus took a team of 100 engineers 3 years to build. Hayes's eyebrow twitched upward. He picked up the drive and plugged it into his laptop. His fingers flew across the keyboard, lines of code and data scrolling rapidly down his screen. The coffee shop was quiet, the only sound the crisp clicking of his keys. I took a sip of the water in front of me. I hadn't been exaggerating. The Urus algorithm was so advanced it made Boreas look like a relic from a different era. Rebuilding the system with it was like using a laser to do the work of a chisel. The minutes ticked by. Hayes's expression shifted from initial scrutiny to surprise, then to a deep, serious concentration. Finally, he stopped. He let out a long breath and leaned back in his chair. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw genuine respect in his eyes. "This architecture, you designed it all yourself?" "Yes, and Nexus Innovations doesn't know about it. They were only interested in extracting my value, not in understanding what my value was," I said calmly. Hayes fell silent, clearly weighing a difficult decision. "My people are at the Nexus data center right now," he said suddenly. "Mark Edwards and his team are still trying to reboot the servers. They're running around like headless chickens. Alex, I need a guarantee. How can I be sure you won't become the next Nexus? You're turning the tables on them today, but what's to stop you from doing the same to Apex tomorrow?" This question was more critical than any of the others. It was a test of trust, a question of character. I looked him straight in the eye. "First, all of my core technology is patented. The ownership is legally clear. That's a guarantee backed by law. Second, Nexus let me go because they thought I was no longer valuable. Apex is choosing me because you see my value. To partners who respect value, I will always deliver even greater value in return. And third, I paused, leaning forward slightly. Mr. Hayes, right now, do you have any other choice? That last question hit him like a hammer. His pupils contracted. He was right. He had no other choice. The massive ship of Apex Logistics was steaming toward an iceberg, and I was the only lifeboat in sight. It didn't matter if the lifeboat looked small and unassuming. He had to get on board. Hayes stared at me, his gaze intense. After a full minute, he picked up his phone and made a call. It's me. Terminate all communication with Nexus Innovations. Pull the entire technical team out of there. Prep the servers and open a port with top-level administrative access. Let Momentum Dynamics connect remotely. That phone call from Hayes was a command, a death sentence that would send Nexus Innovations spiraling into the abyss. It was also the spotlight that would thrust me and Momentum Dynamics on a center stage. Mr. Carter, Hayes said, his form of address shifting from the informal you to the more respectful Mr. Carter after he hung up. How long until we see results? Start the clock now, I said, taking out my own laptop right there in the coffee shop. Give me 10 minutes to connect to your servers. Give me another 30 minutes to deploy the temporary system and restore your two core modules, order processing and logistics scheduling. In 1 hour, 80% of Apex Logistics business will be back online. My words made Hayes catch his breath. 1 hour. A catastrophic system failure that a team of over 100 Nexus engineers had been struggling with for 3 days and nights, and I was telling him I could fix it in 1 hour. This wasn't just confidence. This was the assertion of absolute, undeniable skill. Hayes said nothing more, just watch me work. His eyes held a mixture of hope, doubt, and the quiet desperation of a man who had placed an all-or-nothing bet. I put on my headphones, and the world went silent. All that existed was the flow of code on my screen and the digital heartbeat of a distant server. Apex Logistics granted me server access almost immediately. I saw the familiar back end of the ARC system. It was a disaster. Data streams were corrupted, and error logs were piled a mile high. It was clear that Kevin and his team had been flailing in the dark, trying to fix the problem by rebooting and rolling back data. They didn't realize they were only making the data contamination worse. It was like a doctor trying to treat internal bleeding by putting a bandage on the skin. Pathetic and, frankly, tragic. I ignored the surface-level chaos. My fingers danced across the keyboard, composing a symphony of commands. I didn't try to repair the ARC system. That mess was their problem. My plan was to cut out the rot at its source. I bypassed the ARC system's data processing center entirely. Using a script I had already written, I forcibly rerouted the flow of low-level data. All raw information was now being fed into the temporary Voyager system I had pre-deployed on a cloud server. It was like finding a hopelessly gridlocked highway. Instead of trying to clear the traffic jam, I instantly constructed a new overpass right next to it. All the traffic was diverted to the new road, leaving the old one to crumble into obsolescence. 30 minutes later, I typed the final command. Enter. On my screen, a bank of green indicator lights, representing Apex Logistics core business data streams, lit up one by one. Stable. Smooth. Not a hint of lag. I took off my headphones and drank the now cold water in front of me. Mr. Hayes, I said, you can have your team verify the results now. Hayes's eyes had been glued to my screen the entire time, a look of mesmerized focus on his face. He snapped out of his trance at my words and immediately grabbed his phone. What's the status? I could hear exclamations of disbelief from the other end of the line. The hard lines on Hayes's face finally began to soften. He hung up and looked at me, his expression a complex mix of awe and relief. Mr. Carter, he began, seemingly at a loss for how to express the profound shock he was feeling. Order system is back online. Scheduling algorithm is recalculating. Route planning is restored. Inventory data from over 300 warehouses nationwide is syncing in real time. His phone was on speaker, and the excited voices of his team members filled the quiet coffee shop. Each update was like a sharp slap across the face of Nexus Innovations. Hayes stood up. He extended his hand to me, this time with a formal, respectful gravity. Mr. Carter, on behalf of Apex Logistics, I would like to formally invite Momentum Dynamics to become our new strategic technology partner. Effective immediately. I shook his hand. It was a firm, warm grip. "It's a pleasure doing business with you." Just then my phone buzzed. It was a number I had already blocked, but a text message had come through. It was from Mark Edwards. "Carter, how dare you steal our client? This is a breach of contract. You just wait for a subpoena from our lawyers. I'll make sure you're blacklisted in this industry forever." I looked at the message and smiled. The howls of a sore loser are always so impotent, so laughable. I showed the phone to Hayes. "It seems we have a common enemy." Hayes glanced at the message, a frown creasing his brow. He took out his own phone and dialed his company's legal department. "Get ready," he said into the phone, his voice as cold as steel. "Issue a formal notice of contract termination to Nexus Innovations. At the same time, file a lawsuit against them for the massive economic losses caused by their service contract breach. We'll start the damages claim at $500 million. $500 million. The number rolled off Robert Hayes' tongue so easily, but for me, and especially for Nexus Innovations, it was the equivalent of a Category 5 hurricane. That sum was enough to instantly shatter the cash flow of a company Nexus's size, potentially forcing it directly into bankruptcy and liquidation. This was no longer a simple business dispute. This was a declaration of total war. Hayes hung up the phone, his expression unreadable. "I don't show mercy to my enemies," he said to me. "They had the audacity to sell Apex a system with a fatal flaw. They have to pay the price." I nodded in understanding. I had learned a lot about the brutal nature of business in the last 3 months. Mercy to your enemy is cruelty to yourself. "Mr. Carter, let's talk about the Voyager system," Hayes said, sitting back down. His demeanor had completely shifted to that of an equal business partner. "We need a detailed deployment plan and a formal price quote." "Of course," I replied, turning my laptop to face him. On the screen was the proposal I had spent the entire afternoon perfecting. It covered everything: technical architecture, implementation timeline, post-launch support services, and a comprehensive pricing structure. It was 10 times more detailed than the Hayes nodded repeatedly as he read, his eyes lighting up. He was sharp and could immediately see the value in my plan. He was particularly impressed when I explained that the Eurus algorithm could not only handle their existing logistics data, but could also use predictive modeling to forecast future capacity needs and identify potential risks, providing data-driven support for their strategic decisions. That was what he truly wanted: a Voyager that could guide his company into the future, not just an Ark to process orders. Our meeting lasted late into the night. We were the last customers to leave the coffee shop after it closed. By the end, we had drafted a letter of intent. The total contract value far exceeded my initial projections. Apex Logistics wasn't just willing to pay for the system's development. They proactively offered to invest in my company, Momentum Dynamics, through a technology for equity deal. They would take a 30% stake, while I would remain the majority shareholder. They weren't looking for a mere vendor. They wanted a deeply integrated technology ally. Stepping out of the coffee shop, the cool midnight air felt refreshing on my face. I looked up at the city skyline, feeling as though I was in a dream. Just a few hours ago, I was the sole proprietor of a tiny startup, worrying about how to make ends meet. Now, I had secured a core contract with an industry giant and landed an angel investment large enough to launch my company into the stratosphere. It all happened so fast, it felt surreal, but I knew it wasn't a dream. It was the result of 7 years of hard work and 3 months of relentless preparation. When I got home, Sarah was waiting for me. I placed the signed letter of intent on the table in front of her. As she read the numbers, she covered her mouth, her eyes instantly welling up with tears. For years, we had saved every penny for the house, for our son's future. She had endured so much hardship alongside me. I walked over and gently wrapped my arms around her. "It's over now," I whispered. "Things are going to get better." The next day, the tech industry was rocked by 2 major announcements. First, Apex Logistics unilaterally terminated all contracts with Nexus Innovations and filed a massive lawsuit over the Ark system's severe service breach. Second, Apex Logistics publicly announced a deep strategic partnership with a startup named Momentum Dynamics. They would be fully adopting its new Voyager system and making a significant strategic investment in the company. Momentum Dynamics. Alex Carter. Overnight, these 2 names were on the lips of every professional in the industry. Everyone wanted to know who this mysterious startup was and who this Alex Carter guy could possibly be to have snatched the most valuable prize from the jaws of a titan like Nexus Innovations. My phone started ringing off the hook that morning. Calls from headhunters, venture capitalists, and so-called friends I hadn't heard from in years. I ignored them all. I knew the real storm was just beginning. In the afternoon, a call came from David. His tone was more serious than I'd ever heard it. Alex, Nexus is making a move. They filed a countersuit against you. They're accusing you of theft of trade secrets and embezzlement. They claim they have security footage from your last day, showing you copying core company data. And, he added, his voice grim, they've already contacted several major tech news outlets. They're planning to drag your name through the mud and ruin your reputation. Embezzlement. The accusation was far more venomous than trade secret infringement. If it stuck, I wouldn't just be ruined professionally. I could face prison time. Nexus Innovations was trying to bury me. This evidence they're talking about, copying core data, what's that about? David's voice was calm and professional. On my last day, I did use my personal USB drive to copy some files from my work computer, I admitted. But it was all my personal technical notes from the last 7 years, along with some algorithm drafts and unfinished projects. All of it was saved in a personal folder on my local drive. None of it was ever uploaded to the company's servers. It doesn't qualify as core company data. I understand, David said. But in court, anything created during work hours on a work device can be a gray area they'll try to exploit. Add a media smear campaign to that, and it's easy to sway public opinion against you before you even get a chance to defend yourself. They're trying to destroy your character first. After hanging up, I opened my web browser. It was already happening. Sensationalist articles were splashed across the headlines of every major tech blog. Disgraced Nexus engineer steals core secrets after layoff. Bites the hand that fed him, the programmer and the poison. The greed and betrayal behind Alex Carter's so-called success. Insider alleges Arc system crash was deliberately orchestrated by founder of rival startup. The articles were sharp, slanted, and vicious. They painted me as an ungrateful, scheming villain. My fight for dignity was twisted into a sordid conspiracy. The stories were filled with anonymous quotes from supposed former colleagues, all implying that I was a bitter, disgruntled employee who had always been a problem. I could immediately recognize the manipulative language of Mark Edwards and Kevin Fisher behind the words. They were masters of character assassination. The comment sections online were a cesspool of vitriol. Countless anonymous users, armed with zero facts, were calling for my head. This guy should be blacklisted from the industry. He stabs his own company in the back. What a piece of trash. Apex Logistics must be blind to partner with someone like him. The mud was slung so easily, and it was sticking. Momentum Dynamics, my fledgling company, was about to be drowned in a sea of public outrage before it could even take flight. My phone rang. It was Robert Hayes. "Mr. Carter, I've seen the news," he said, his voice as steady as ever. "Do you need us to step in? The Apex Logistics PR team can help you manage this." A wave of warmth washed over me. At a time like this, he didn't question me. He offered support. That trust was worth more than gold. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes," I said, taking a deep breath. "But this is something I need to handle myself. This is my fight." "All right," Hayes said without hesitation. "I'll just say this. Apex has 100% confidence in your skills and your character. Our partnership will not be swayed by any external noise. Do what you have to do." After his call, the last shred of hesitation in my mind vanished. The enemy had made their move, using their favorite weapon, lies and manipulation. Fine. I would respond with my own weapon of choice. I dialed David's number again. "David, I need you to do something for me. Send out an invitation to every major tech journalist in the city. In 3 days, Momentum Dynamics will be holding a press conference." David paused. "A press conference? What are you planning?" "I'm going to unveil the Urus algorithm live in front of everyone," I said, my voice calm and resolute. "I'm going to demonstrate, in real time, exactly how it blows Boreas out of the water." "They want a media war?" "I'm escalating it to a technology war. I will let everyone see with their own eyes what true innovation looks like. I'll show them the one thing they can never steal or replicate: I'm going to let the facts obliterate their lies. 3 days later, the small office of Momentum Dynamics was packed. I hadn't booked a ballroom at a five-star hotel. I chose our humble co-working space, the one with just a few desks and chairs. I wanted everyone to see exactly where Momentum Dynamics began. The audience was filled with dozens of journalists, their faces a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. A forest of cameras and microphones was pointed at me. The constant flash of cameras felt like an interrogation, tried to expose every hidden corner of my mind. In the back of the room, I spotted a familiar figure. Mark Edwards. He wore a baseball cap and a face mask, trying to blend in. But I would recognize those venomous eyes anywhere. He was here to see me fail. I gave a slight smile in his direction. Then, I walked up to the makeshift stage. There was no slick PowerPoint presentation, no emotional opening monologue. The large screen behind me displayed only the clean, simple interface of a code editor. Good afternoon, members of the press, I began. My name is Alex Carter. Thank you for coming to what might be the first and possibly the last press conference for Momentum Dynamics. My opening line caused a stir in the audience. I know you're not here today to hear about technology, I continued. You're here for a story of betrayal, theft, and a despicable programmer. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I won't be telling that story, because it's a lie, fabricated by others. Today, I'm only going to show you one thing. I'm going to show you what real technology looks like. I turned to face the large screen and placed my hands on the keyboard. Nexus Innovations has accused me of stealing the core secrets of the ARC system. The secret they're referring to is the Boreas algorithm, an algorithm designed to process and schedule large-scale logistics data. It's true that I wrote that algorithm, but it doesn't belong to Nexus. It belongs to me. I brought up the patent certificate for the Boreas algorithm on the screen. The large, official seal was clearly visible, and the application date was a full 2 months before my termination. A volley of camera shutters clicked through the room. Some might say this was all part of a premeditated plan, I said. Fine. In that case, today, right here in front of all of you, I'm going to create another secret. My fingers began to fly across the keyboard. Lines of code appeared on the screen, not from a copy-paste, but typed out live. This is my latest algorithm. I call it Eurus. Its core logic is fundamentally different from Boreas. It incorporates dynamic programming and predictive modeling, putting it in a completely different dimension of efficiency and accuracy. I explained as I typed, my voice steady and clear. Most of the reporters in the room couldn't read code, but they could read my demeanor. The intense focus, the absolute confidence in every keystroke. It was impossible to fake. 10 minutes later, I stopped. The core framework of a brand new, complex algorithm was complete. And now I announced for the main event. I imported a sanitized, real-world dataset provided by Apex Logistics from the previous week. It contained tens of millions of data points. First, let's use the publicly stated performance metrics of the ARC system to simulate the processing speed of the Boreas algorithm. A progress bar appeared on the screen and began to move sluggishly. The estimated time to completion read 45 minutes. This, I said calmly, is the core technology that Nexus Innovations is so proud of. Now, let's try it with Eurus. I hit the Enter key. The progress bar shot across the screen like a bolt of green lightning. In the center of the screen, a few large words appeared. Processing complete. Time elapsed, 35 seconds. The room fell into a stunned, absolute silence. Everyone was speechless, shocked by the staggering difference. 45 minutes. 35 seconds. This wasn't an iteration. It wasn't an optimization. This was a complete and utter annihilation. A takedown from another dimension. I turned back to face the reporters. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice ringing with conviction. Something that can be easily copied is not a core technology. It's an assembly line task. True core technology is right here. I pointed to my head. It's a person's knowledge, experience, and creativity. Those are things that can't be stolen. Nexus Innovations claims I took their secrets. That's laughable. The most critical secret, the one they can never replicate, is me. They can fire one Alex Carter, but they will never be able to create another Eurus. That is my response. I finished with a deep bow to the audience. As I straightened up, I looked toward the back of the room. Mark Edwards' mask had fallen to the floor. His face was ashen, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and utter despair. He knew he had lost in the most humiliating way possible. The press conference was over, but the shockwave it created was just beginning to spread. That evening, every tech news outlet had a new headline. 35 seconds of shock and awe. Alex Carter demolishes theft allegations live on stage. A genius programmer's hardcore comeback. I am the core's secret. Nexus Innovations facing catastrophe as ARC's system proven to be obsolete technology. The articles were no longer filled with gossip and slander. Instead, they offered detailed frame-by-frame analyses of my live demonstration, breaking down the insurmountable technical gulf between the Boreas and Urus algorithms. Professional tech forums exploded. Programmers everywhere were dissecting the video of my live coding session. That code is beautiful. It's a work of art. Writing a framework of that caliber in 30 minutes? That's not human, that's God tier. Alex Carter is officially the new benchmark for programming excellence in this country. Overnight, public opinion did a complete 180-degree turn. I went from being a traitor who stole secrets to a hero fighting back against corporate oppression. The traffic to the Momentum Dynamics website was so overwhelming that the server crashed multiple times. My inbox was flooded with partnership proposals. This was all part of my plan. But what truly moved me was the call I received from Robert Hayes. "Mr. Carter, I watched the entire press conference live," he said, his voice filled with an excitement he could barely contain. "Honestly, I underestimated you. You've taught Apex and the entire industry a valuable lesson. Don't worry about our contract. The legal team is fast-tracking it as we speak. Also, our board of directors held an emergency meeting. We've decided to increase our investment in Momentum Dynamics. We're no longer asking for a 30% stake. We only want 20. The rest is what you've earned. We're not just investing in the Voyager system. We're investing in you, Alex Carter." His words meant more to me than any business success. To be seen and valued by someone you respect. That was everything. The next morning, David called. His voice was relaxed, tinged with the satisfaction of a battle already won. "Alex, it's time to close the net. Nexus is in complete disarray. Their stock hit rock bottom the moment the market opened today. A lot of their top engineers are asking for your contact info, looking to jump ship. Mark Edwards has been suspended by the board, pending an internal investigation. And their legal team called me a dozen times last night, trying to negotiate a settlement." A settlement? I scoffed. They didn't seem interested in a settlement when they were trying to ruin my life. "It's too late for that now." "I know," David chuckled. "I already told them as much. And just a few minutes ago, on your behalf and on behalf of Momentum Dynamics, I filed our official response with the court. We've countersued. First, we're suing Nexus Innovations for patent infringement, demanding they immediately cease using the Boreas algorithm and pay you $30 million in personal damages. Second, we're suing Nexus and the media outlets involved for trade libel and defamation, demanding a public apology and $100 million in damages to the reputation of Momentum Dynamics. David's words were like cannon fire, each one a direct hit on Nexus's most vulnerable points. They had tried to destroy me with lawsuits and public opinion. Now, I was returning fire with the same weapons, but with 10 times the force. "Well done, David," I said. "Let them see what it feels like to be cornered." "Don't worry," David said confidently. "After your press conference, they have zero chance of winning. Right now, they're not thinking about how to win the case. They're thinking about how to die with a little bit of dignity." Hanging up the phone, I walked to the window. The sunlight outside was brilliant. The war that had been raging for 3 months had finally reached its turning point. The trumpets of a full-scale counterattack had been sounded. I'm not a bloodthirsty person, but for those who had tried to crush me under their heel, who had tried to grind my dignity into the dust, I would show no mercy. I didn't just want a victory. I wanted a complete, undisputed, crushing triumph. I want to make it clear to everyone, once and for all, a tech professional's dignity is not to be trifled with. The moment the court summons arrived, the boardroom at Nexus Innovations descended into chaos. Their stock was in freefall. Their top tech talent was staging a mass exodus. Their biggest client was suing them for a fortune. And now, they faced a merciless countersuit from me. Every piece of news was another hammer blow to the once mighty company. They finally understood what pain felt like. They finally realized that the programmer they had so carelessly discarded had become a force they could no longer fight. Settlement became their only option. 3 days after my press conference, I received a call from an unknown number. The caller identified himself as the assistant to the chairman of the board at Nexus. Their big boss, Arthur Harrison, wanted to meet with me. His tone was utterly obsequious. It was a mirror image of the desperate call I had received from Leo Vance. Only this time, the plea was more formal and far more desperate. "Fine," I said, not refusing. "Time, 3 o'clock this afternoon. Place, the conference room at Momentum Dynamics. Have him come alone." I set the terms. I was not going to him. He was coming to me. I wanted this high-end mighty chairman to see with his own eyes the kind of talent he had destroyed and the formidable enemy he had created. At 3 p.m. sharp, Arthur Harrison appeared at the entrance of Momentum Dynamics. He looked older than I had imagined, with graying temples and a weary face. He wore the practiced smile of a seasoned executive, but the deep-seated exhaustion and anxiety in his eyes were impossible to hide. He came alone, without an assistant or a lawyer. It was a deliberate gesture, a posture of humility, a plea for mercy. Unfortunately for him, he had come to the wrong person. In the conference room, he started by playing the sympathy card. He reminisced about my early days at the company, praised my 7 years of contributions, and painted Nexus as a big family that had once cherished me. I listened in silence, not interrupting his cringeworthy one-man show. After waxing nostalgic about the past, he began making promises about the future. "Alex, I know we did you wrong. Mark Edwards has been suspended, and the company will make it right by you. If you're willing to drop the lawsuit, we'll give you double your severance package. No, 5 times. He held up a hand. "Furthermore, we're prepared to offer $100 million to acquire the patent for your Urus algorithm. Just name your price. Everything is negotiable." He thought this was all about money. I laughed. "Mr. Harrison," I finally spoke, my voice quiet but each word like a shard of ice. "You don't seem to understand the situation. First, my patent is not for sale. Second, I'm not dropping the lawsuit. My terms have been, and remain, singular." I stood up, looking down at him. "Nexus Innovations, and Mark Edwards personally, will publish a formal apology on the front page of 3 major tech publications for 3 consecutive days. You will apologize to me, Alex Carter, publicly. You will admit to your slander and your attempts to ruin my reputation. Then, you will pay every single cent in damages outlined in my lawsuit. Not 1 penny less." Harrison's face turned ashen. A public apology? That would be a public admission of their defeat and their despicable tactics in front of the entire industry. The company's reputation would be utterly destroyed. It was a fate worse than death for them. "Alex, let's be reasonable. There's no need to burn bridges." His voice grew heavy. "Do you really have to be so ruthless?" "Ruthless?" I shot back. "When you fired me, cut off my health insurance, attacked me in the media, and dragged my name through the mud, were you thinking about not burning bridges? Don't you think it's ridiculous to talk to me about that now?" My questions left him speechless. He stood up and gave me a long, hard look. His eyes were filled with anger and resentment, but mostly with helplessness. He knew the negotiation was a complete failure. He turned and walked silently out of the conference room, his back slumped like a defeated old rooster. I knew they wouldn't accept my terms easily. They would continue to fight, but their time was running out. After Harrison left, I went back to my office. A text from an unknown number was on my phone. "Alex, it's Sam Peterson. Remember me? We worked on the first version of ARC together." Sam Peterson. An image of a kind, honest face floated into my mind. A true tech guy just like me. I'd heard he had offended Mark Edwards by being too blunt and was exiled to some obscure IT support department. Why was he contacting me now? Before I could reply, a second text came through. "I know some of the dirty details about what Mark and his cronies were doing. It might be useful to you." I met Sam Peterson at a quiet tea house. He had aged considerably in the few years since I'd last seen him. His hair was streaked with gray, and his face was etched with lines of worry. Only his eyes were the same, clear and honest. He was one of the few people at Nexus I had genuinely respected. "Sam," I said, pouring him a cup of tea. "How have you been?" He gave a bitter smile and shook his head. "Not good. Ever since Mark Edwards and his political climbers took over, the company's been a toxic mess. The real tech guys either got forced out or marginalized, like me. It's been painful to watch the company get hollowed out from the inside. His voice was filled with a sad resignation. "Alex, I saw your press conference," he said, looking up, a spark in his eyes. "That was incredible. So satisfying to watch. You did what all of us wanted to do, but never dared. You stood up for all of us honest, hardworking tech guys." I remained silent, just listening. I knew he hadn't come here just to praise me. "I came here today to give you something," he said, carefully taking an old USB drive from his worn briefcase. He placed it gently on the table. "This," he said, his voice low, "is evidence I've been quietly collecting for the past few years." Mark Edwards, along with the CFO, set up several shell corporations on the side. These companies became preferred vendors for Nexus. They used them to embezzle huge amounts of money from the company's project budgets. A lot of the servers and hardware for the ARC system were purchased through their channels. The prices were inflated by at least 3 times, but the quality was the absolute worst. Sam's words hit me like a thunderclap. It all finally made sense. Why the ARC system had been plagued by so many bizarre hardware failures in its later stages. Why the project budget was always so tight. Why I had to spend so much of my own extra time and effort fixing problems that should never have existed in the first place. The entire foundation was rotten. That emergency bug that got you fired, Sam continued, was caused by a core network switch failing. It was a refurbished piece of junk they bought through one of their shell companies. Martin knew exactly what the problem was, but he pinned all the blame on you. Because with you gone, his secret could stay buried forever. My fists clenched involuntarily, my nails digging into my palms. A fire of pure rage burned in my chest. This wasn't just corporate politics. This was a crime. This was blatant, large-scale embezzlement. "Sam, I'll never forget this," I said, picking up the USB drive and looking at him seriously. "You have my word, I won't let you down, and I will not let these parasites get away with it." Sam's eyes welled up. He stood and gave me a deep bow. "Alex, I'm counting on you. I helped build that company from the ground up. I can't bear to see it destroyed by a bunch of crooks." After Sam left, I immediately called David. My voice was trembling with anger. "David, the trump card we were holding just got upgraded to a nuclear bomb." I quickly summarized what Sam had told me. David was silent on the other end for a long moment. Then, I heard him take a sharp breath. "Alex, don't move. I'm on my way to you right now." His voice was dead serious, but I could hear a tremor of excitement in it. This evidence, this could send their entire board of directors to prison. David arrived in record time. When he saw the damning financial records and internal emails on the USB drive, even this seasoned, big-shot lawyer couldn't help but curse under his breath. "These people, the audacity," he muttered. "This isn't just a business dispute anymore. This is a classic case of organized white-collar crime. The amount of money involved is enough to keep them locked up until they're old and gray." That night, David's team and I worked through to the morning in the Momentum Dynamics office. We sorted through all the evidence, cataloging it, and building an unbreakable chain of custody. Every detail pointed to one inescapable conclusion. The senior management at Nexus Innovations, led by Mark Edwards, had formed a massive corruption ring dedicated to embezzling company assets. The next morning, before the sun was even up, David took a thick file of whistleblower evidence and knocked on the door of the city's Economic Crimes Division. He wasn't just acting as my lawyer anymore. He was acting as a citizen, reporting a major crime. The rest was no longer a game of business strategy. It was a matter of the law delivering its judgment upon evil. The efficiency of the authorities was beyond anyone's expectations. Perhaps they'd already had their eye on a big fish like Nexus and were just waiting for a crack to open from the inside. The evidence I provided was the sharpest knife they could have asked for. A week later, a bombshell story rocked the entire financial world. Nexus Innovations executives under investigation for massive embezzlement and corporate fraud. Police have launched formal probe. The news footage showed police cars swarming the impressive Nexus Innovations office building. Countless employees, clutching their cardboard boxes, streamed out of the entrance, their faces a mixture of confusion and panic. The once celebrated star of the tech scene had collapsed overnight. I sat in my bright, modern office at Momentum Dynamics, calmly watching the live broadcast. A few hours later, a familiar figure appeared on screen. It was Mark Edwards. He was being escorted out of the building by two plainclothes detectives, one on each arm. He wasn't wearing a hood or trying to hide his face. He just looked gray and empty, as if all the life had been drained out of him. The same man who had been screaming threats at me over the phone just days ago was now a common criminal awaiting judgment. As he was being pushed into the back of a police car, he seemed to sense the camera, and he lifted his head to look directly into the lens. I don't know what he saw. All I know is that in his eyes, there was no trace of his former arrogance. There was only a bottomless well of regret and terror. I turned off the television. It was all over. The war that had lasted for months had ended in a way I had never anticipated. I didn't go out to celebrate. I didn't accept any interview requests. I just went about my day as usual, discussing the next iteration of the Voyager system with my new team in my new office. Outside, the sun was shining. The office was filled with the sound of keyboards clicking and the passionate debates of young engineers. There were no office politics here, no backstabbing. There was only a pure love for technology and a boundless excitement for the future. This was everything I had ever wanted. Just then, my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but the area code was familiar. It was from a Nexus Innovations office block. I hesitated for a second, then answered. A timid, almost fawning voice came through the line. It was Leo Vance, the HR manager who had fired me. Mr. Carter. His voice was shaking. Hello, sir. I'm unemployed now. Nexus went under, and I was let go. I saw that your company is hiring, and I was wondering if maybe I could. His voice trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. His pathetic, desperate plea came through the phone loud and clear. I held the phone in my ear, silent for a long, long time. I held the phone, saying nothing. On the other end, Leo Vance's voice was thick with a desperate humility. The same HR manager who had once stood before me, cold and superior, wielding rules and regulations to crush me, was now begging me for a job like a dog begging for scraps. My mind flashed back to that night, 3 months ago, the harsh fluorescent lights of the conference room, his emotionless, mask-like face, and his icy words, sign here. Your last day is the end of the month. How the tables have turned, and how quickly. Mr. Vance, I finally said, my voice perfectly calm. Leo seized on my words like a drowning man grabbing a life raft. Yes, Mr. Carter. Yes, sir, whatever you say. His voice trembled with a sycophantic eagerness. I paused, then asked my first question. Do you remember the things you said to me on the day I was laid off? My question was like a bucket of ice water dumped over his head. Leo was instantly speechless. Of course, he remembered. Every bureaucratic, by-the-book phrase he had uttered was a knife he had twisted in my gut. Mr. Carter, that was just my job. I had no choice. He stammered, trying to make excuses. It was all Mark Edwards' decision. I was just following orders. I had no interest in his justifications. I cut him off with my second sentence. My company isn't hiring heartless cogs. That sentence made Leo's breathing stop. He might not understand the Urus algorithm, but he understood the meaning of those words perfectly. A cog. That's what he was and what I had been at a massive corporation like Nexus. An easily replaceable, disposable part. No one cared if you had feelings, if you were tired, if you were hurting. Your only value was to fit into your designated slot, doing exactly what you were told, no more, no less. I founded Momentum Dynamics to shatter that very system. I wanted partners, teammates. I wanted living, breathing people who would get excited about a common goal, who would laugh, argue, and pull all-nighters to solve a tough problem. Not cold, replaceable cogs. Leo Vance did not belong here. Mr. Carter, I can change. I promise I'll change, he pleaded, his voice breaking into a sob. I have a mortgage, my kids are in school. Please, just give me one chance. His desperate cries were identical to those of the countless employees he himself had fired. The irony was staggering. I took a deep breath and delivered my final sentence. You made your choices. You need to live with them. With that, I hung up the phone. I felt no satisfaction, no pity. It was like burying a cold, forgotten tombstone from my past. I turned and looked back into my office. My new team was in a heated debate over a technical detail, their faces red with passion. A fresh college graduate was pointing at an architectural diagram on the whiteboard, boldly challenging my design. A seasoned veteran stood beside him, smiling and adding his own thoughts. Sunlight streamed through the massive, floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating their energetic faces. It was warm and it was bright. I knew I had made the right choice. I looked out the window. The sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue. The era of Nexus innovations was over. The era of momentum dynamics had just begun. I walked over, picked up a marker, and, with a smile, joined their discussion. The past was the past. Let it go. My life and my career were turning a new page. A chapter written by me, filled with infinite possibility. The collapse of Nexus innovations left a massive void in the market. It was like a great whale falling to the ocean floor. Countless smaller clients who had depended on it were suddenly cut adrift, their businesses paralyzed by the lack of technical support. Overnight, momentum dynamics became the center of everyone's attention. The success story with Apex Logistics was the best advertisement we could have asked for. Robert Hayes even personally organized several client referral meetings for us. Orders began pouring in like an avalanche. The company expanded at a dizzying pace. The single desk in our co-working space grew into a row, then an entire floor in a new building. I poached top talent from major tech firms and recruited many of the honest, hard-working engineers like Sam Peterson who had been buried in the rubble of Nexus. Momentum Dynamics was growing, not just rapidly, but healthily. It all felt like a dream. One afternoon, Sam Peterson came to see me. He was now the director of IT operations at Momentum, a man reborn. But today, his expression was serious. "Alex," he said, "there's something I think you should know." He handed me a list. This is the final list of employees who were laid off from Nexus. Most of them are administrative staff, support personnel, non-technical workers. Because of Nexus's ruined reputation, they're having a hard time finding new jobs. A lot of them can't even make next month's rent. I looked at the long, dense list of names. I recognized many of them. They might have been indifferent to me, or looked the other way, but ultimately, they were just the most insignificant parts of that cold machine. When the company collapsed, they were the first to be crushed. A strange feeling stirred in my chest. "What are you thinking, Sam?" I asked. "I was wondering if there's a way we can help them," Sam said, his gaze sincere. "Obviously, we can't hire them all at Momentum. But I was thinking, what if we used our technical expertise to build an industry-specific job board and skills-sharing platform? A place where these unemployed people can learn, showcase their abilities, and find new opportunities. It would be a way to do something good for the industry as a whole." Sam's idea moved me. Only someone who has walked out of the ruins truly understands who gets buried beneath them. Countless ordinary people with their struggles and their tears. "Done," I said, making the decision on the spot. "You'll be in charge of this project. The company will give you all the resources you need. We're not just going to be the leaders. We're going to be the ferrymen." After Sam left, I felt a sense of fulfillment greater than any I'd felt from signing a major contract. But just when I thought the storms had passed and the future was a clear and open road, something unexpected happened. That evening when I got home, I found a small, unmarked package in my mailbox. There was no return address. Puzzled, I brought it inside. Sarah and my son were already asleep. I sat down in my study and slit the package open with a letter opener. Inside, there were no letters, no dangerous materials. There was only one object, a shattered, old-fashioned compass. Its brass casing was bent, the glass was cracked, and the magnetic needle inside was broken in two. It lay there silently in the packing foam, a silent, mocking gesture. My heart seized. A compass. Arc Voyager. The symbolism was unmistakable. Beneath the broken pieces, there was a small slip of paper. There was no signature, just a single line of cold, block letters printed from a computer. Even a navigator can get lost. A chill shot on my spine. This wasn't over. Nexus Innovations was gone. But its chairman, Arthur Harrison, the old man I had personally pushed off a cliff, the man who had stared at me with such venom in our last meeting. He hadn't given up. The business war was over. A personal war, waged from the shadows, was just beginning. I didn't tell Sarah about the compass. I didn't want to worry her. The next morning, I drove to work as usual, but I was on high alert. I kept checking my rearview mirror, watching the cars behind me. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But after I passed through an intersection, a black, unlicensed SUV started following me, keeping a steady distance. It didn't try to pass, nor did it get too close. It just hung back like a ghost, tailing me. I made a sudden turn at the next corner. The SUV followed without hesitation. My stomach sank. They weren't even trying to be subtle. This was a blatant act of intimidation. They were telling me that my every move was being watched. I didn't drive directly to the office. Instead, I looped around the city for an extra half an hour. Finally, I pulled over on a street lined with security cameras. The black SUV stopped a few dozen yards behind me. We sat there, a silent standoff. I couldn't see who was inside, but I could feel a cold, piercing gaze boring through the tinted glass. After a long moment, the SUV slowly started up, made a U-turn, and drove away. I sat in my car, my back soaked with cold sweat. This wasn't business competition. This was a mob-style threat. Arthur Harrison had lost his mind. He was resorting to tactics from outside the boardroom. I immediately called David. "David, I think I'm being followed." I quickly told him about the compass and the SUV. David's voice on the other end became instantly sharp. "Alex, don't panic. First, get yourself to a public place, somewhere with a lot of people, and make sure you're safe. I'm going to contact a friend of mine who runs a private security firm. In the meantime, I'll start digging into Harrison's whereabouts immediately." An hour later, I was sitting in a bustling shopping mall when David called back. "I found something," he said, his voice grim. The day after Nexus was shut down, Arthur Harrison checked himself out of the hospital where he was being treated for a stress-related condition. He liquidated all of his properties and stocks at a low price, converting everything into a large sum of cash. And then he vanished. "Vanished?" I asked, my brow furrowed. "Yes. No one has seen or heard from him since," David continued. "But we found a lead through some back channels. His last known location was at an underground money laundering operation. He met with a man there, a man with the street name Scorpion. This guy has a heavy record. He's a professional." David didn't finish the sentence, but I understood. Harrison was hiring a hitman. He was using the last of his fortune to arrange one final, fatal gift for me. My anger was quickly replaced by a profound sense of danger I had never felt before. My enemy was a professional killer hiding in the shadows. And I had a company, a family. All my vulnerabilities were out in the open. This was not a fair fight. That night, I didn't dare go home alone. I had the security team David sent oversweep my house first. Only then did I cautiously return. Sarah could sense my unease. "What's wrong? Is there a problem at the company?" she asked, her eyes full of concern. I forced a smile. "No, just tired. Things are moving fast." I couldn't bring myself to tell her that a venomous scorpion might be lurking in the shadows just outside our home, waiting for the right moment to strike. I didn't sleep a wink that night. I sat in my study, staring out into the darkness, and for the first time, I felt true fear. I had won the corporate war, but now I was facing a real one, a battle for my life. Just then, David called again, his voice urgent. "Alex, check your email now. We got a partial file on Scorpion. This guy is extremely dangerous, and we've discovered something even worse." Before Harrison disappeared, he bought a one-way ticket to Southeast Asia. But David's voice seemed to catch in his throat. He never got on the plane. The ticket was a decoy. He's still in the country. He's in the same city as you. Arthur Harrison was still here, hiding in some dark corner of this city, like a venomous snake waiting to strike. The news was so chilling it felt like my blood had turned to ice. Before, I was facing an unknown professional. Now, that professional had a mastermind behind him, a madman who hated my guts and knew everything about me. The danger had just increased exponentially. "Alex, from this moment on, you and your family are not to go anywhere without protection." David's voice was deadly serious. The security team he hired was top-notch. They quickly established a comprehensive protection plan. I was escorted to and from work, a 2-point lockdown. My home security system was upgraded overnight to fortress levels. Sarah quickly noticed the tense, unusual atmosphere, but I still couldn't tell her the truth. I just said that the company's rapid growth had attracted some malicious competitors, and we needed to take precautions. She was worried, but she chose to trust me. I noticed she held me a little tighter at night, as if trying to share the burden of my stress with her own warmth. A week passed in this state of high alert calm. The enemy made no move. The black SUV seemed to have vanished from the face of the earth. But the quieter they were, the more my anxiety grew. I knew Harrison too well. He was an incredibly arrogant man. He wouldn't be satisfied with petty intimidation. His silence meant he was waiting for the perfect opportunity, a chance to strike a single, fatal blow that would destroy me completely. I couldn't just sit back and wait. Hiding in a fortress would never eliminate the enemy outside. I had to draw him out. I presented my idea to David and the head of the security team. They were both silent. "That's too dangerous, Alex," David said, being the first to object. "We don't know their plan. We don't know what they're capable of. Making yourself the bait is playing with fire." "No," I shook my head. "I'm not the bait. I'm the hunter, and I'm going to design the perfect hunting ground for this chase." My gaze was unwavering. I knew exactly what I was doing. I was going to fight an asymmetrical war using a programmer's logic. My plan was simple. Momentum Dynamics would host a massive celebration and a groundbreaking ceremony for our new campus. I would make the event as public and as grand as possible, inviting all our partners and every media outlet. I would stand in the brightest spotlight I could create. Harrison's pride would never allow me to have such a triumphant moment. He would come. He would choose the peak of my success to try and annihilate me. And that day, at that location, would be the grave I had chosen for him. David looked at me for a long time, then sighed. "I must be crazy to go along with this. All right, what do you need me to do?" The plan was set in motion, in secret. The location for the ceremony was a wide-open, developing tech park. There were no high-rise buildings nearby that could serve as a sniper's nest. All entrances would be tightly controlled. The security team, under the guise of being a construction crew, moved in 2 weeks early. They turned the entire venue into an inescapable net. Countless pinhole cameras were installed in every conceivable corner. Signal jammers and facial recognition systems were all put in place. Meanwhile, I assembled a small, elite team of my best cybersecurity engineers at Momentum. Our mission was not defensive. It was offensive. From the moment the invitations to the ceremony were sent out, we would monitor every whisper of unusual network activity across the entire city. Any attempt to hack into the venue security system or to look up my personal information would be locked onto instantly. "So, Harrison, you want to play outside the rules?" I thought. "Let me show you what a real dimensional takedown looks like." The day of the groundbreaking ceremony was bright and clear. The venue was bustling with people, a who's who of the tech and business world. Robert Hayes from Apex Logistics was there in person with his team. The flashes from the media cameras were nearly blinding. The employees of Momentum Dynamics, dressed in new company jackets, had faces beaming with pride. Everything looked perfect. I stood backstage in a sharp suit, a tiny earpiece in my ear. The head of security and the leader of my cyber team were feeding me real-time updates. Gate 1 secure. Gate 2 secure. Network monitor is clear. No suspicious intrusión signales. Everything was eerily quiet. The calm before the storm. It was my turn to go on stage. I took a deep breath, straightened my tie, and walked out into the spotlight. I picked up the microphone and scanned the faces in the crowd. Smiles, applause, well wishes. I knew that somewhere in that sea of friendly faces, a pair of eyes was watching me with the most venomous hatred. Today is a day to remember. I began my prepared speech. Just then, a voice crackled in my ear, urgent and suppressed. It was my cyber team lead. "Alex, we've got him." An encrypted signal is attempting to connect to one of the aerial drones filming the event. "We're tracing it back now. The signal source it's coming from the abandoned building across the field." My heart skipped a beat, but my face remained a mask of calm, smiling composure. My speech continued without the slightest falter. The abandoned building. It was the only blind spot in the entire area, the one place outside our security perimeter. The man was a professional, just as I'd expected. "Hold your position. Don't spook him," I whispered into the microphone hidden in my collar. "Lock onto his signal, but do not cut him off. I want to see what he has planned." "Understood," came a steady reply from my team lead. In the audience, everyone was captivated by the grand vision I was painting for Momentum Dynamics' future. No one noticed that high above, one of the media drones had quietly broken from its pre-programmed flight path. Like a trained falcon, it adjusted its angle, its camera locking onto me at the podium. But beneath its camera, a small, inconspicuous payload bay door slid open, revealing a blinking red light. At that same moment, on the top floor of the abandoned building, a man in a baseball cap with a scorpion tattoo on his face stared at a tablet screen. The screen showed a close-up of my face as I spoke. A cruel smile played on his lips. His finger hovered over a large, red virtual button. One gentle tap was all it would take. The high incendiary device attached to the drone would detonate instantly. He could already picture the podium erupting in a ball of fire, the crowd screaming in panic. And he would calmly walk away, down a different path, and disappear without a trace. Behind him, an older figure held a pair of binoculars, his eyes fixed on the venue. It was Arthur Harrison. His face was twisted in a sickening expression of imminent revenge. "Do it," he hissed. "Blow him to hell." The man called Scorpion sneered and pressed his finger down hard. And yet, nothing happened. The image on his screen showed no fire, no explosion. Only my face, still calm, now with a faint, mocking smile. The drone just hovered in the air, motionless like a puppet with its strings cut. "What the hell?" Scorpion's face contorted in anger. He frantically tapped the screen, but the controls were completely unresponsive. "Your signal has been intercepted." A cold voice suddenly emanated from his tablet speakers. It was my voice. Scorpion's entire body went rigid. He finally noticed a small progress bar on his screen, which had appeared out of nowhere and was now rapidly filling up. "Your personal information, your bank accounts, your entire criminal record." My voice continued, as dispassionate as a judge delivering a verdict. "I even found the receipt for the takeout you ordered last night. And by the way, I've forwarded your current location to the relevant authorities. They should be arriving shortly." Scorpion's eyes widened in terror. He spun around, ready to run. But it was too late. A team of black-clad security personnel, moving with silent, swift precision, had already appeared behind them. The dark muzzles of their weapons were trained on him and Harrison. "Don't move." The binoculars in Arthur Harrison's hands fell to the ground with a clatter. The look of crazed triumph on his face froze, then crumbled into pure, abject terror. He stared at the security team leader, his lips trembling. "You how?" The team leader's face was impassive. "Mr. Harrison, Mr. Carter asked me to pass on a message. He said you have to fight fire with fire. Using technology to deal with you would be giving you too much credit." Back at the venue, my speech was drawing to a close. The future of momentum dynamics is a sea of stars. The crowd erupted in thunderous applause. I smiled and bowed deeply to everyone. The sun was warm on my back. I knew, in that moment, that all the shadows had finally been banished. Behind me, the hijacked drone slowly flew over the center of the stage. Its payload bay opened. But what fell was not a bomb. It was a shower of brilliant, multicolored confetti. That perfectly executed countermaneuver became the most talked-about special feature of the groundbreaking ceremony. When the news broke that Arthur Harrison and the hitman known as Scorpion had been apprehended, the media went into a frenzy. They finally understood that behind the grand celebration lay a tense, life-or-death confrontation. And I, Alex Carter, the programmer who had risen from the ashes, had not only achieved a stunning business comeback, but had also, in the real world, heroically defended everything I held dear with intelligence and courage. The next day, my name and momentum dynamics were on the front page of every publication. This time, there was no controversy, no doubt. There was only awe at the power of technology and admiration for one man's unbreakable spirit. The reputation of momentum dynamics soared to unprecedented heights. The storm had passed. Life finally returned to the peaceful, beautiful rhythm it was meant to have. The first thing I did was go home and tell Sarah everything, from the broken compass to the life and death moment at the ceremony. I held nothing back. When I finished, she didn't cry or scream. She just walked over and held me tightly. I could feel her body trembling slightly. "It's all over now," I said softly, stroking her back. "I know," she mumbled into my chest, her voice choked with emotion. "But from now on, you're not allowed to carry this kind of burden alone. We're a team. We carry it together." I nodded forcefully, my own eyes becoming misty. She was right. My family was the entire reason I fought so hard. They were my strongest, most impenetrable armor. A few months later, the new Momentum Dynamics campus was completed. We moved into a futuristic building of glass and steel. The company had grown to over 500 employees, becoming one of the brightest new stars in the city's tech scene. The Ferryman nonprofit platform that Sam Peterson was in charge of had also become a huge success. It not only helped countless unemployed programmers find new jobs, but it also became a renowned community for technical exchange and knowledge sharing, injecting a new, positive energy into the entire industry. One afternoon, I stood before the giant floor-to-ceiling window in my office, looking out at the bustling city and the setting sun. The phone on my desk rang. It was David. "Alex, just wanted to let you know," he said, his voice relaxed and final. "Harrison's case is closed. Multiple convictions, sentenced to life without parole. Same for Scorpion. They'll be spending the rest of their days behind bars." "I see," I replied calmly. My heart was untroubled. The name already felt like a distant piece of dust from another century. "Oh, one more thing," David added. "After Nexus went bankrupt, their old office building was left in a mess. The Corps put it up for auction, but no one wanted it. I pulled some strings and got it for you at a rock-bottom price. What do you want to do with it?" I paused. That building, the place where I had worked for 7 years, the place that had been my prison, the place that had witnessed all my humiliation and all my struggles. Countless nights spent working alone in that empty office flashed through my mind. The cold keyboard, the unchanging view of the city at night. After a long moment, I spoke. "Tear it down." "What?" David was surprised. "Demolish it," I said, my voice firm. "And in its place, build a new apartment complex for programmers. We'll rent the units at cost to our employees at Momentum, and we'll open it up to all the young programmers in this city who need a place to start." David was silent on the other end of the line. After a few seconds, I heard him chuckle softly. "Alex, you know what you are? You're a hopeless idealist." I smiled. After hanging up, I looked out the window. The last rays of the sunset painted the entire city in a warm, golden light. He was right. I was an idealist. I had been knocked down by reality, consumed by darkness. But in the end, I chose to believe in the light, to chase the light, and to become the light. Because I knew that technology itself has no warmth, but the people who wield it can. I didn't just want to build a business empire. I wanted to build a new world, a world where every ordinary person like me could create with dignity, with dreams, and with warmth. The office door opened. It was Sarah, with our son, here to take me home. My son ran towards me, laughing, and leaped into my arms. "Daddy, let's go home." I picked him up and kissed his soft cheek. "Okay, let's go home." I took my wife's hand, holding my son, and walked out of the office. Behind me, the city lights twinkled like a million stars. Before me lay an endless future. The east wind had risen. My new voyage was just beginning.